Here is the agenda. All right, cool. Anybody want to give us DevNet 7 updates? I saw something akin to stability.
Yeah, so we have a fundraising DevNet. We mainly have Lighthouse and Teku as majority validators on the network, with Get and Nethermind sharing the baseload. We have a stable fundraising network, so we can use it for all sorts of blob tooling updates. And one of them has been the Blob Explorer. It's been updated to the spec now, and it works. Yeah, besides that, any other blob related testing can happen on this testnet.
Tweet, are we consistently spamming load?
Avoiding doing too much right now, because we did trigger an issue with Bezu and want to give it some space to figure out that issue. But once that's done, we have everything required to consistently spam it. So we're kind of ready to go.
But we're sending some, like on some.
Yeah, we had a couple of periods where there were like 2,000 blobs submitted, and then whatever makes it home.
Cool.
Just waiting for the Explorer to load, but I can give you more accurate stats there.
Any questions for Perry on the main points here? On the client split, is that because the clients are the clients that are not taking the majority load are not as stable, or because they're not online, or what?
Because they're not as stable, and some clients are just following the chain. They're not proposing or testing. There's an issue tracker here, so you can see who's attesting, who's proposing, who's following, and you can scroll down to see issues you've already triaged and a couple of unanswered ones.
Hey Perry, do you know or like what the next steps would be for dealing with that deposits issue?
Yeah, I think that's the big one. Also wanted to bring it up today. I'm also not really sure how we proceed with that one. To give some more context, Justin made a couple of deposits last week. I think it was 20. And last we checked on Friday, they still hadn't made it onto the validator set, and we're not really sure why. They seem to have been noticed according to the Lighthouse ETH1 voting stats. So they should have made it, but yeah.
Is the was there consensus on the ETH1 data voting and process deposits, or we don't know?
All of the tooling I have for debugging deposits are Lighthouse based, and as far as I can tell, Lighthouse sees everything okay. So either it's an issue on Teku's side or it's something completely new. So Proto's message about wrong fork digest. If that's the case, then Lighthouse shouldn't have seen it, but Lighthouse does see it. So I guess the summary there is, can someone from Teku help us figure out how to see the ETH1 voting view from Teku's perspective? And that should already give us everything we need, I guess, because Teku plus Lighthouse is majority already.
Right, I guess to follow home on Proto's point, Lighthouse would see it, the voting would happen, those deposits would be added to the chain, but they'd be a no-op because their proof of possession would be incorrect. So it could go through the whole flow and then you don't get new validators because the signature validation.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So a good theory to look into.
Yep, we'll investigate a bit more, Justin.
Cool. Other updates or discussion points for DevNet 7?
I can give a quick status on Besu. We have an issue with the data hash operation. We've got it expressed in our traces, and we think we have it covered under Hive tests. So we should have a fix for that any hour now, I would say. We expect to continue proceeding on the chain once that's solved. This is a regression because this used to work on the previous dev deck.
Sorry, and this is something that is in Hive or can be in Hive?
Yep. We are currently failing 19 Hive tests
Gotcha.
in the Cancun suite, and they all seem to orbit this issue.
And I'm just posting a message about the current status of all the devnets. So something about devnet 7, devnet 8 specs are out, release date unknown. So we'd stick to devnet 7 until everyone's comfortable moving on. And just a sort of long-term deprecation warning, I guess. We want to stop doing Bellatrix Genesis and move to Capella Genesis. And we won't do that for devnet 8, but we would like to do that for devnet 9. We're also going to be testing it offline to make sure and create some issues, but we just wanted to bring it up so that there's a bit of a forcing function there.
Okay. Any other updates people want to share about DevNet 7? Cool. DevNet 8, there's a few discussion points. We can do the easy one first. The should override builder flag, which is a new flag making its way into the engine API. That should be relatively straightforward to get in. I believe there was some discussion on the Discord about if this should be in DevNet 8. I believe that was the kind of general takeaway from the past two Alpha Devs calls, but it would be good to hear if anyone is opposed to that making into the DevNet 8 spec. Going once. Great. Okay, I believe that is the consensus. That will make it into the DevNet 8 spec. Cool. There was an item put here by Tim, and there's not a link to what the discussion is, but it's just APIs for L2s. So if anybody has the relevant discussion points for that, by all means.
Yeah, so I guess 2 weeks ago, that team has this call to action. They want feedback from their two team on whether the current API or the current Beacon API is good enough for layer 2. So as far as I know, we haven't heard much feedback from their two teams on just like whether the current Beacon API is, especially get blobs, is good or is useful enough. But I went back and I surveyed around Arbitrum just to get their feedback. I guess the most useful feedback I get is that, like, instead of retrieving blobs using block ID, it is very nice, compelling for them to be able to retrieve blobs using version hash. So I created this Beacon API issue essentially to to basically enable like blob retrieval using version hash. Because their smart contract is constructed, instead of using block ID, version hash will become much easier. So yeah, so I mean, I don't know if this is like a mandatory endpoint that all clients should implement, or this is like optional. But yeah, but I guess if clients do implement it, then that's very nice because there's some client diversity there. And then because I'm sure that their two team will be very happy for this.
Okay, and if this isn't implemented, then essentially the team has to identify what block their transaction made it into and then can do the retrieval from there, right?
Right. There is an additional layer of mapping involved.
Yeah, understood. It looks like there was at least a little bit of discussion here. Is there anybody else on the consensus layer that wants to chime in on this? It looks like it would be an added endpoint because of the ambiguity of the 32-byte hash rather than using the same endpoint.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, anybody have discussion for this one? Proto or anyone on the optimism side have opinions on how they believe they're gonna use this? Okay, I see. Proto. I'll just read this. Introduce the API by block ID in February, still works with optimism as L2. Ideally, we can fetch it by something that can be identified by EL, identification by slot, and then consistently checks result works. Additional endpoints would require indexing.
Right. So this does bring some like CL complexity, right? Because now a CL client needs like just additional mapping for a block ID to version hash. So there is some increased complexity there. So therefore, I think like an optional endpoint makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah, optional endpoint's gonna end up fragmenting use. So I'd prefer not to go down that path and figure out what's needed here. I guess my question is, when does an L2 not aware of the blocks their transactions made it into, because that would be when they'd have to do this extra mapping.
Right, because like for Arbitrum, currently only version hash is stored on chain. They don't store any block ID related things on chain. So to verify the blobs, they can just get a version hash from the on-chain contract and do a quick lookup, versus like another layer of mapping to map block ID with the version hash.
Yeah, Proto, I'm not sure why you can't unmute. I'm trying to. Here, I'll make you a co-host. See if that works. Yeah, okay. Probably Zoom bug. Okay. Further discussion on this? Thoughts on direction we can take it, or at least take it back to this issue?
Yeah, or yeah, if there's any additional comments, please comment on the issues.
All right, cool. Thanks, Proto. Is Arbitrum on testnets, on our testnets, or have a plan to join? And same with Optimism.
I
you
can
guys are
speak
here.
for Arbitrum. There's definitely plan to join as soon as possible. Just we're waiting for things to stabilizing a little bit. Because I know DevNet 8 is coming, so I'll probably wait for DevNet 8 when we have most of the things in there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, okay, this is probably an item we'll bring up again, but in the context of as we get into the more and more serious test nets, we should be inviting more and more teams to do prototyping. Getting feedback. Hey, Proto, I saw you rejoined. Do you have anything you want to toss in?
Okay, I'm fine now. Sorry about the whole unmute thing.
All
Okay,
good.
so about the API thing, it's either indexing or from timestamp to slot. The current API works, it just isn't like ideal. Now for layer 2 participation, we are looking to rebase our prototype on the latest version of Word4. It's just timing. Like we need to figure out like when to execute on this and join a definite.
Right. Okay, cool. We'll keep this conversation going in the coming weeks, either on this call or on All Quarters. Anything else on the APIs discussion? And Terrence, if you do want to surface that issue on the consensus layer call, to push for more feedback, we can, if we don't get sufficient input there. Okay. Anything else on DevNet 8? Okay. Next up is a PR to the execution APIs. Clarify Cancun payloads handling by early APIs reorder checks. I guess this is not even necessarily for specific. Does anybody have the context here?
Hello. The API, this API update helps to clarify some corner cases, how we handle V3 payloads by V2, and it also reorders checks. I would say defines order of validations needed for a new payload, get payload methods. So we it's now becomes more clear in terms of testing and implementation what error codes we should expect in different situations connected to timestamp and other fields passed to the APIs. So it is expected that V2 and V3 methods should decline requests when timestamp is not of correct fork, and additionally, if any additional fields are passed or fields aren't passed or contain null values, it should be declined with a different code of invalid params, and this request, well, the intention was to clarify these corner cases.
Gotcha. So is this non-substantive? Like, does it make any? It's all clarifications.
Yeah, mostly clarifications, and it's very like useful for type tests when we have some undefined like behavior, and if it would be cool to have maybe on the next DevNet.
Okay, great. I saw Lukas just approved, and that Mikhail did it too. Why don't we have this up for another day or two for eyes and then get it in?
Sounds good.
It makes sense to me. It might require a slight modification of checking the constraints. So this PR makes EL to check that the strict set of fields is passed onto the method. So if more fields are passed, it should be rejected. This is to aid finding bugs on the early stage of development, like on DevNets. If CL messes up with the structure or with the method or with the timestamp, meaning that it sends a payload of, say, Cancun onto Shanghai method and vice versa. So
Got it. Okay. Any questions here? Great. Thanks, Mario. Okay. Thanks, Alexei. Okay, we did slate sometime if there were any updates on some of the CL Gossip Sub modifications that have been under discussion. Both flood staggering, I do not want, and other things to that tune. Anybody that's working on these R&D avenues have any updates?
Yeah, hey, can I say a few words about
Great, please.
networking? So yeah, actually there is, I don't want PR, but I must say that I don't want is not like a silver bullet. It's just actually a slight optimization for large messages. It mostly reduces the total load on network, so not a great latency gainer. We also going to add another PR to Gossip. It's ping pong. Yeah, it's actually could be used for several things. Yeah, and those are also like small. All of them are actually small optimizations. Yeah, which we probably need to do testing in the real world. Yeah, the main actually the like my general impression is that the block decoupling, which is also already done, and like flood publish fix would probably be enough for 844. And yeah, and probably maybe all other optimizations could be done like asynchronously from all client, because they don't need like hard forks. So the what about flood publish? Actually, I have like a simple idea for resolving this issue. Is just like just disabling flood publish for blocks and blobs topics. It should probably work quite okay. So we have no security issues with this, I believe. Yeah, because I actually don't. Yeah, actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure at which point we enabled flood publish. I think it's like for more efficient attestation publishing.
Yeah, I
probably
think soon before phase 0, it was enabled because it seemed like an obvious optimization and people didn't think about the parallelization issues too much.
Yeah, probably it makes sense just to disable it for blocks and blobs. That's it.
I have a question. When you disable it, do you still send the messages in parallel to the peers on your mesh? So you still might hit
Right.
parallelization issues, but just not.
Yeah,
you're not
right.
gonna hit the crazy ones.
Yeah, right. But it shouldn't be big deal for a good bandwidth. But yeah, but actually staggered sending like would be good to have. But as I said, that probably another optimization that we could enable later.
Should we, in the CLP2P spec, actually make a note that flood publishing should be disabled on those topics?
Yeah, but actually currently flood publish is like a global option for for Gossip. Yeah, so there should be it actually my another approach is just to disable it for messages larger than some threshold.
Is that, but that would still need to go into the P2P, libp2p
Yeah.
stack. Not gonna be something
Yeah,
we
right.
can just kind of configure.
Right. Right.
Okay.
I think we had a discussion that we don't have to disable the FAT publish, right? It's like we can still enable it, but we can just send the message to the non-mesh peers like later instead of like immediately. So right.
Yeah, but it's more of just, that's not like an easily configurable thing for libpdp like that. Any of these require going into and making deeper modifications, right?
Yeah, also the like the question later is it's kind of I don't know how to say it. It's fuzzy because you never knows when your message like was
Right, like once you've
already
seeded it to
sent.
the mesh, maybe you should just stop instead of sending it to your 50 other peers.
Yeah, actually for large messages like I have message already when like join the game because it send into 100 peers message like of size half of a megabyte would take would most likely take more than 1 heartbeat. So you most likely will be sending I have message on this stage.
Right. Does I just realized I was muted. Did you hear any of that? Do all CL clients have like an R&D path to like do either the disabling or the staggering, or is that still an unknown for a few clients?
I know Age is working on this for Lighthouse, but I don't have too much in the way of specific updates.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I have to check.
I actually think Age was planning to add like disabling flood publishing in the next Lighthouse release, but I mean, don't quote me on that.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess this is one of the single biggest things that could change the success of these large messages. Definitely prioritize getting it out. And it's, I guess, nice that if a client or two don't do it, then it'll just affect the client in question and the proposals coming from that client, but it'd be best to probably have this across the board. Okay, Anton, you said on the I don't want, you said it's not really a latency gain, it's more of to help reduce total bandwidth consumption, total load. Is that, do we have that quantified at all?
Sorry, yeah, right. It's not like yeah, correct.
But do you have an idea of the potential reduction in total load, latency aside?
Yeah, we have. So yeah, we have that list of potential improvements. Yeah, it includes staggered. I think that probably the best gainer is if staggered sending could be implemented in a good fashion. Probably then we have like TCP slow start issue. Yeah, it affects a lot. Yeah, we have a dirty workaround, and it's like a frequent ping. So yeah, that would be like not very good solution, but it should work if we, for example, if we implement like gossip, if we can ping and gossip like once like once per 200 milliseconds. Yeah, it's actually dirty, but it works. Yeah. So yeah, so I think that staggered sending and TCP slow start are the next things we could address. Yeah, and yeah, and that gossip ping pong messages I mentioned, they're helpful for staggered send and TCP slow start avoidance also. Yeah, I don't want just like an easy way to reduce total load.
Right, on
but-
the reduction of load for I do not want, or I don't want, is that quantified? You know, is it a 50% reduction? What's the?
It's kind of 30% reduction. It's
Okay.
yeah, it's my simulation results, but yeah, and it's kind of 3 to 5 latency reduction, so not huge.
Got it. Other networking discussion points or questions for Anton?
Do you think we should have do you think we should fork the lib2p spec level, like so that we can have our own spec and like we can add anything we want to the spec?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a path. I think that we're better off if we can work with the larger libp2p community and have shared tooling, and thus don't have to fork the software as well. But if we do hit a hang up, it's definitely an option. Does anybody have other opinions here? Yeah, I mean, and we could also, if we're having timing issues, we can fork and try to then merge it back upstream, if we need to work around. But I would try to play in the same environment if we can. Cool, other networking comments? Okay, any other discussion points for today?
Yeah, I would like to ask other execution clients like about replacing of block transactions. Do we have some consensus on how much must be a bump of max fee per gas, max priority fee per gas, and max fee per data gas?
This is mempool replacement.
Yes.
Marius, do you know the rules currently in place in the Geth mempool?
I'm just looking it up.
And then I think importantly, are there rules around, I had a blob transaction and I switch it to a non-blob transaction? I guess you want the replacement fee to be on that high end rather than the normal transaction.
Yeah, so I think right now we have 100% for everything. So basically you have to increase all of the fields by 100%. So double.
And that's to go from a blob transaction to a blob transaction and to go from a blob transaction to another type rate.
That's to go from a blob transaction to a blob transaction I'm not sure.
Because that
I
would be a
suppose-
loophole, right? If you could go
Yeah.
cheap to the other.
No, so we have one thing that one thing that we implemented or that Peter implemented is that you cannot have two transactions in two different pools. So basically the block pool is its own transaction pool and the other pool is the normal pool. And so what you cannot have is one normal transaction, one block transaction, and then another normal transaction or something like this. So that's forbidden in gas.
So once I have a nonce in a particular pool for an account, I can't swap pools.
Yes. I'm not sure about replacement though. And once the transaction is mined, you can have a transaction in a different pool.
Roberto?
Yeah, we discussed this quite a while ago at this point, but I think one of the proposals that came up, and I don't know if anyone followed up on it, was to disallow any attempted replacement of a blob transaction with a transaction containing fewer blobs, because in some sense you've already kind of taken the hit once you've processed it, right? And so it's just a potential denial of service factor. But that was just one idea that had been proposed before. So like if you have a one blob transaction, you can only replace it with another one blob transaction or something with more blobs, not something less. I don't think anyone's implemented that though.
Yeah, like from what was discussing, it was even like that for block transactions, only fields with fee can change, like all others must remain the same to replace it. But making it possible to add more blobs might have sense, like it just needs to have consensus here.
Yeah, I don't know. I cannot really I don't really know what the rules in Geth are right now. So yeah, I basically I think that Ansgar is right that we don't expect many people to use those transactions, and the people that use those transactions are very capital heavy organizations that can provide their or like write their own transaction relayers and stuff to do so. Yeah, regarding the rules, I think we should maybe discuss on our core dev when Peter's also part of the discussion.
Yeah, it'd also be great if, I know Peter's done a lot of the thought and design up front, and then probably has iterated quite a bit on the design. If we can just document what the rules are in Geth at some point, might be useful for everyone. Very cool. Try to bring it up in ACVE with Peter. Anything else on mempool blob transactions, fees? Okay, other discussion points for today? Great. Good work on DevNet 7. Excited to see it continue to stabilize and get some more even client distributions over time. talk to you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you, bye.
Bye.